Hey, everybody. God bless you.
Hey, it's Friday night. We're back here again. It's End Time Talks, and we want to just take a moment to say welcome to everyone who is already coming on in. And we are just so glad that you joined us again for another episode of our podcast show. Just you and I sitting here conversating, but you guys have a seat at the table. And so we just want to say welcome. We're so glad that you joined us tonight. And if you haven't done so already, click on the share button and let everyone know that you are participating in this really important conversation about the end times. And we want to give you a moment to do that. And as more and more people are trickling in, I'm watching both Facebook as well as YouTube online. And I'm going to be monitoring comments as they come in. So that's your reminder and a cue for you to go ahead and let us know that you're tracking with what we're talking about. And if you have any questions or comments that you would like for us to be aware of, or questions that you would like an answer for, that is your opportunity to go ahead and write it in that comments section, and I'll go ahead and bring it to the conversation, and I'll let Gary know about it, and you'll get an answer to your question live. So again, welcome to End Time Talks. I'm Pastor Bernie. This is Pastor Gary of the International House of Prayer Eastern Gate, and we are so glad that you chose to be here with us tonight on Friday night. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. We have a lot going on here.
A lot going on. A little shout out to Bernie. Today is the last day of our internship.
That's right.
That's been going on for how long?
It's been 14 weeks.
14 weeks
Yes.
Internship, about 20, 30 people?
We have about 18 students.
18 students.
We started about 21 and then trickled down to 18, but 18 strong.
And they graduate tonight.
They graduate tonight. That's
so
correct.
I was in the little dinner they were doing to kind of mark this night, and Pastor Bernie had them starting out doing foot washing.
That's right.
Which
That's right.
they're just washing each other's feet and
Yes.
praying over each other. Just a sweet presence of the Holy Spirit that was going on in that room. And so anyway, you've been running around setting that up, and then you come in here, and now we're ready to do
shifting
that.
gears, just all the emotion of that room and it's still going on. They're there now in the midst of all that.
It's great.
And just sharing testimonies, but shifting gears to have this really important and really exciting conversation. Brother, you are, as far as I'm concerned, my personal scholar when it comes to this topic.
Okay.
So I'm so glad I get to share you with everyone. And again, I want to remind you guys should not be watching passively. If you have questions or comments that you want to be addressed or answered, feel free to join this conversation. And all you have to do is in the comments section below, let us know what that is. And I'll be monitoring that as best I can, and I'll bring it to Gary's attention. And have no mercy. Give him your hardest question.
Sure.
He can handle it.
Yeah. It's not Stump Gary, but it's there's a real, true question or something, definitely.
Yeah, so what are we talking about today? What's on your heart?
I was thinking about, since this is last week's show was more about the conference,
Yes.
which is why we're doing this. Well, I shouldn't say why we're doing this, but we've set it up this way to conclude at the end of the year. We do a 4-day conference.
That's exactly right.
That's going to be a hybrid, in person and online. It'll be both throughout those days. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. But we talked a lot about it last week. And so I was thinking, okay, when people think end times, what's like number one subject on their minds? Rapture. Yeah,
Rapture.
Right. I mean, everyone's kind of thinking rapture, especially now, because we kind of. I don't want to put this idea down, but we've kind of treated the rapture as a get me out of here quick
That's right.
plea. Which I understand, because there's plenty of times in life where we just want to let's get out of this place. It's going crazy. And, it's really, it's more than that. Yay, a billion times more than that. That's probably the last thing or the first thing it's not. It's not a get out of here quick situation.
That's right.
But it really has a beautiful flow in the entirety of the deliverance narrative of the end time scriptures. And again, most people think of end times, they start at the rapture, and that's not where we should be starting. But I figure let's just get the ball rolling today, and we can discuss some of the questions that might come up about the rapture and stick it in its proper place in the narrative.
Yeah,
Make sense?
Absolutely. And I think this is such an important topic. I mean, I think that because unfortunately the church we haven't done a better job of elucidating, clarifying, and I say this with a little bit of culpability in that, because we're not clear on the end time topics. The movies, Hollywood, the industry has gone ahead and decided to teach and preach that message themselves through the movies. But it then becomes sensationalized. It's not scriptural. It's not biblical. And then it also is made to be more sensational. And it's really about all the drama that ensues, airplanes crashing. And there's a lot of that, of creativity and imagination that's gone into that. The Bible doesn't highlight any of those things.
But it's so true. It was always like, will I be driving? And all of a sudden there's going to be car accidents everywhere. What about the pilot? Yeah, the clothes, the pilot crashing planes. I mean, I remember all of those stories, and it became the end time story. And there was nothing else I ever needed to know but that. Yeah. And boy, that's going to be bad.
Yeah. There's not a single church boy who grew up in the church who doesn't have a story like this.
Yeah.
I came home, I couldn't find anyone, and started making phone calls to make sure that I didn't get left behind.
Yes.
Everyone has a version of that story, right?
Oh my gosh, it was so true. But, putting it in its rightful place doesn't end the dramatic events of it.
That's right.
There is a lot of drama attached to it, but it's dramatic in love and not dramatic in activity and action.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So I thought what I would do is read a passage. It's very familiar, but read through a passage and make comments on the passage as if it's a standalone passage.
That's good.
Without commentary, without opinion, just this is the way this event reads in one particular passage. So get out your Bibles if you're watching. Woo! That's something we do. Okay.
That's like an inside joke.
Inside joke. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And I'm going to give a little background to it. I'm not going to do Bible study. I'm just going to read it. And then see what questions come out of it.
Sounds good.
So, Paul, and you can help me with the history here, Bernie. Paul visited the Thessalonica church. He gave visit to it. He talks about that visitation in the book of Acts. And in the book of Acts, he's saying that I was with the Thessalonian church for 3 weeks. 3 Sabbaths is what it says. And it's the only mention in the Bible about his visit. It's the only time he went and actually went to this new church, this baby church, and spent 3 Sabbaths with this church plant, if you will. And it's very interesting that in his letter, after his visit to the Thessalonians, the books of 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are all about the end times. 1st and 2nd Thessalonians is an end time letter to the baby church of Thessalonica. So it goes to tell you that what did Paul think is so important that this new church needs to know at its inception?
Wow.
The end time narrative.
Wow.
See, that we kind of place it at the back end. We go, well, let's not scare anybody away with all of that stuff. Let's kind of get forgiveness down, redemption down, and all of that. Paul's going just the opposite. What, baby church? I'm going to spend 3 Sabbaths there. What are we going to talk about? The end times.
Wow.
And it's shown that we know that because 1st and 2nd Thessalonians is all about that. So we see 2nd Thessalonians chapter 2. He is actually, this is a follow-up letter to 1st Thessalonians, naturally. And he's making reference to information that they received contrary to his teaching when he was there for 3 weeks.
That's good.
And that's the context. So he says in chapter 2, he says, now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him. So we see the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, our gathering together to him. We ask you, don't be shaken in mind or troubled, either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if it's from us, as though the day of Christ or the day of the Lord has already come. Now, we know that phrase, the day of the Lord, is a prophetic phrase of the ancient prophets. The day of the Lord, the day of the Lord, the day of the Lord. It means something specific. So he's not just saying an arbitrary day of the Lord. He's talking about a specific moment. What is the day of the Lord? Thessalonian, Church of Thessalonica knew it. All right, they knew what that meant. It's the day in which God will release judgment upon the earth, where Isaiah puts it, where he himself will be exalted, and everything else would be brought low. And that culminates into the Messianic age, the age to come that we make reference to. Okay. So that's what he's talking about. Don't be deceived. Don't be shaken in mind. Don't listen to any other spirit. Don't listen to any. Don't read any letter as if it came from us. That the day of the Lord has already come. It's already shown up. And then verse 3: let no one deceive you by any means. So we got to watch that. Don't be deceived by any means. And here it is: for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. The falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. Now, the man of sin being revealed, the son of perdition, that's easy. Who would that be?
Antichrist.
It would be the Antichrist. Everybody says that is the Antichrist. So, the day of the Lord will not come unless, one, not in necessarily the order, but we know the Antichrist is revealed as the Antichrist. Okay. When do we know that he becomes revealed? In the ancient prophetic witness. Daniel chapter 9, the 70th week of Daniel, gives us that information that the abomination of desolation, the Antichrist, is revealed in the middle of the 7-year period, middle of the week. All right, so we have a timing for the day of the Lord won't come before the middle of the seventh year, or the 70th week of Daniel. The second thing, which is the first thing he mentions, it will not come unless the falling away comes first. All right, now let me help the pre-tribbers out here, respectfully. That day will not come unless the falling away comes first. That word is apostasia. Apostasia. Now, several commentaries out by pre-tribulational rapturists that would say the word apostasia does not mean apostasy. Doesn't mean unless there's an apostasy, unless there's a falling away in the church. The word apostasia actually has its roots in departure. So then they'll go, that should read, that day will not come unless the departure comes first.
I've not heard that before.
And that's the rapture. Trust me, that is the biggest stretch that can be done
Absolutely.
in the Greek language, because every time apostasia is used, every time in biblical language writings, in extra biblical writings, in other than biblical writings, that word means apostasy. It's speaking of a falling away from a religious order, not even necessarily Christian.
Wow.
It's used in other contexts, falling away from some degree of religious order.
Wow.
So that stretch is a big stretch.
And a dangerous one.
And a dangerous one. And it really is cramming in an idea that just can't fit there. There is no Greek scholar that would agree with that cramming in. None, not one. So there needs to be a falling away, an apostasy that will come first in the church, which means they'll fall away from the truth, not fall away from faith. See, you can have belief in an untruth.
That's right. That's good. That's a good clarification.
You can have faith in an untruth. And there are plenty of religious orders that have an untruth and faith.
Wow. So the apostasy is going to be very deceiving in that sense, because it's not that they're necessarily falling away from a belief of God or in God, but they'll have a misunderstanding of who he is, or,
Right.
or what he's expecting of us. I mean, it'll be a life of devotion, but not unto the truth of the scriptures.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Now, I'll give you some examples of this small apostasy that grows into a larger apostasy. So Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses
Excuse me.
would be considered by a purist definition, Christian, in that they have belief that Jesus Christ died for the sins of man.
Right.
All right. But they have these tiny little truths that grew and grew and grew and grew over the decades and centuries. They're not that old, but whatever, maybe a century. And now they're totally apostate.
You're right.
In the same way, the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith, and how he came from Christianity and began to add and take away and so forth. Mormons consider themselves Christian.
That's true.
But their faith is in a different gospel. All right. So those small little changes grow into big apostasy. Think about Islam. Muhammad began pursuing Judaism and Christianity. It's well known. It's in the Quran.
Yeah.
It actually talks about it. But it began to change until what we have today, which is basically an apostasy from the original. So the great falling away is like Timothy says, that there'll be a departure from loving the truth.
Yeah.
And then Paul talks about that. So let's keep going. So we have two conditions. Pre-trib rapture says no conditions. He could come at any moment. Here we see from Paul two conditions. So he describes the Antichrist who opposes, exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. He's doing commentary on the abomination of desolation here, Daniel chapter 9. Then he says this, verse 5. Don't you remember that when I was with you, I told you these things? Paul's first visit to the baby church at Thessalonica, he's going, I told you these things. Yeah, I preached eschatology to you, and I gave you these details.
Wow.
These specific details. He wasn't just going, all right, you need some eschatology, so let's get the eschatology, kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
He only had 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And he poured into them, make sure you understand the eschatology. Don't be shaken. Don't be fooled. Don't be, deceived by any means. Don't you remember I told you these things? It's almost like Paul's going, how can you believe any letter that you received outside of what we discussed?
Yeah, you should know better.
Don't you remember?
He's making an assumption. They got this. You know this, and you know better.
He did not leave there without them knowing this information.
Yeah.
So that little verse is a surprise to him and a chastisement.
Yeah.
You should know better. We went over these things. So it's not fringe information.
Yeah.
It's not just for that group over there to know. It's not even just because it looks like it's the end times. Maybe we should study the book of Revelation. Right. Which is what's going on now. I mean, I like that. I appreciate it. At least they're waking up. But if things start to get better again, Revelation's going to go on the shelf again.
That's exactly right.
And Paul's going, baby church, learn this. Okay.
That's so good.
And now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. And now you know what is restraining. What is restraining what? What is restraining the revelation or the revealing of this time, that he may be revealed in his own time. He's talking about the revealing of the Antichrist.
Right.
For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he's taken out of the way. Now that's another verse you have to be careful with. You have capital He who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way, capital. So we look at that and we go, well, it's Jesus, it's God, it's the Holy Spirit. The capital H is a commentary. It's not in the original text. Everything was in capital in Greek. Okay. So there is no designation there. If it's capital, you should have a little footnote number. Do you have one?
I don't have an.
You don't have one. You're in the little. Oh, yeah. In your Bible, you might have a little footnote that has a little number that brings you to the information, and it says, or small h, he. All right. So it's not like the Bible saying it. God is holding back right now. Right. That's not what it says. He who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Now, there's a lot of commentary on the he. who the he is. Some say it's Michael the archangel, according to Daniel chapter 12. I'm not against that. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 does talk about it. Michael the archangel will arise, and he will release, or I think it's, I forgot the actual word, but it's like, oh, he'll go to war. I think he goes to war with the devil. The indication is that Michael's the archangel is the one that's kind of restraining.
Interesting.
Could be. But if you really break down verse 7, to me, it's talking about the one who restrains is actually the Antichrist. He who now restrains, the devil, the Antichrist, he's restraining himself, will do so until he is taken out of the way. That phrase actually, if you read the Greek of that phrase, it means until he appears out of the midst of them. You could look up the Greek and you could find that in any Greek online thing. The word means is revealed in the midst.
Wow.
When he's revealed in the midst of all the working. So verse 7 can actually say, the Antichrist himself and the devil, remember whenever you think Antichrist, you think of Satan too, is restraining right now until the day he reveals himself. It's just making the point that this is the timeline. The timeline is actually in the abomination of desolation, which is what Jesus said in Matthew 24 and what Daniel said in Daniel chapter 9. Okay, verse 8. And when the lawless one will be revealed, and then the lawless one will be revealed, that goes with verse 7, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders. Whoa, that's big.
That is big.
Okay, the working of Satan will be shown with power. So it's going to have a degree of might to it, awesomeness, right? But that's not all. He's going to have signs and wonders. Wait a minute. No. We're supposed to do signs and wonders. Yes, and they will have signs and wonders. The enemy will perform signs and lying wonders. Of course, it's qualified. So we need to know biblical signs and wonders.
Yeah.
We can't just go, wow, that looks cool. That's a sign and a wonder. We have to know what in Scripture are the qualifiers for a sign and a wonder. And I'll give you the qualifier right now to consider as you ponder any of this. What does a sign do?
Points.
It points to something.
Points the way to something. Yeah.
A sign and a wonder points to something that's coming. So any sign and wonder that points to the return of Jesus is a sign and wonder to pay attention to. Any other sign and wonder that points to anything else is one that it needs to be judged rightly against that code, that
because
truth.
it's a distraction from the one thing that all signs and wonders should be pointing to, which is the return of Jesus.
It has to be pointing to his return, the coming kingdom, the new covenant. It has to point to that, or it's not a sign. What do we want a sign for?
That's so fascinating, Gary. And if I could just pause for a moment here, we have a bunch of people who just came on, and if you're just coming in now, let me just tell we are talking about the end times today, specifically talking about the rapture, and we're unpacking the scriptures right out of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we're entertaining all the different details that are given to us there in terms of the things that point to, that describe the events leading up to the return of Jesus. And what you just described there with regards to lying signs, lying wonders, I'm gonna add that lying to all three of them.
Yeah.
And this false power is so interesting because today I think that I find a lot of our brothers and sisters being so wooed and wowed by signs and wonders and never really taking the time to discern, because it looks powerful, it's a sign and a wonder. It's obviously going to have an effect on us emotionally or visually, right? But ultimately, we're called to discern these things because what this text is saying is that the enemy is going to have an imitation version. It's like Moses throwing down his serpent, and the enemy is going to throw down his serpents as well, like the staffs. He's able to mimic, if you will. And it's only going to be discerned by what is it pointing to?
Right.
Like, what is it unto? And if we're not doing that kind of work, we can get distracted in something that has the appearance of godliness but denies its power.
Absolutely. That's so good. Yeah.
Wow.
And, it's the charismatic debate, I guess, cessationist debate, kind of maybe not lands there, but it's a big landing pad at
Yeah.
least in the idea of signs, wonders, miracles. Do they still happen? And, we have the cessationists that go all the way on one side just going, no, they stopped because we don't need them and it's all fulfilled already.
Yeah.
And it's going against, well, at the end, not all, but it will be, a degree will be about signs and wonders. So there will be signs and wonders that point to Christ. So if you're already denying that one, they don't happen, then you're going to put everything in the category of deception.
Yeah.
And then that brings up the cessationists and the charismatic debate that causes division,
Right.
Which shouldn't be. But on the other side, charismatics, sometimes we give a reason for people to be skeptical because everything is a sign and a wonder.
Correct.
And so I guess my point in saying all that is that we have a qualifier
Yes.
for signs and wonders.
That's good.
They point to the return of Jesus.
Yes.
They say something about it.
That's so good.
Okay. Verse 10, and with all unrighteousness, deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth. They didn't receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. So we see, again, qualifiers that are happening in these 10 verses. It goes on. We could go all the way to the end of chapter 3 with what Paul is saying, because he's just correcting something that's very important. But we see that just in this short amount of time, Paul's going, I've told you all the details. Let me remind you the points. And he gives all of these bullet points. So we see that right here, the church, because he's saying this to the church, you will see the great falling away. You will face the Antichrist, and you will experience lying signs and wonders, deception that will come against you. Yeah. So he's warning them, and he's saying this purposefully so that they're not caught off guard on that day. So that means they're going to be there. So all that to go, pre-tribulational rapture would say, no. Like Thomas Ice and a couple of other commentators would say, the great falling away is the rapture first. Right. So you don't have to worry about any of the day of the Lord. You don't have to worry about the lying signs and wonders. Don't worry about it. Can you imagine them telling Paul that? Paul, what are you talking about? We don't have to worry about it.
Wow, yeah.
Falling away, we remember, we got a letter from this guy, this commentator that said, you really meant falling away to be the rapture. And I'm sure Paul would say, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, no, I've already talked about the parousia. Right, I would have used the word parousia if I meant the parousia comes first. Right. He would have definitely, Paul is a Pharisee, he was a scholar. He's a teacher. He's been taught directly by Jesus. Do you think he would make that kind of mistake to say something that would leave it wide open for interpretation? If he meant the parousia, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, comes first, he would have said it in verse 3.
Yeah, you're right.
He would have used the word and made it perfectly clear. Why? Because he's correcting something here. He doesn't do that. He wouldn't give a veiled reference to the rapture. He would have called it what he called it in the first letter. He doesn't do that. It's a different thing, he's saying. Falling away comes first. The apostasy will come first. Love the truth. Know the word. You need to know this stuff so that when the apostasy falls upon you, he describes it in verse 11, that God himself will send the strong delusion. What does that mean? God, that's kind of mean. No, God's saying the delusion that's going to come has to come to separate the wheat and the tares, separate the sheep and the goat. It's going to come. Part of that will be God allowing for there to be the opportunity for apostasy.
Wow.
He's not causing apostasy, but he's laying the groundwork that if apostasy can exist, then those that do not love the truth will separate. He's the great shepherd. He's separating the sheep and the goat before the sheep and the goat.
That is so good, Gary. I have to make a confession. I'm gonna make it live right here. I was just reminded as you were unpacking that. there was a time, and I mean, full disclosure, I taught pre-trib for a long time, and I had this kind of a flashback to a moment where I read this text before and wondered why he would point to all of these different post-trib, in my mind, thinking pre-trib means that there's a secret rapture, and then all these events would happen. I wondered, why did he point to all these things as the markers of Jesus hasn't come yet, because this, and this hasn't happened? I wondered actually at one time.
Wow.
That doesn't make sense.
Wow.
I did not make the connection. I did not question my theology. I just realized that's an odd way to answer the question.
That's
and move on.
That's amazing.
Did not, and now you're unpacking. I was like, I've had this moment before. And I've had this moment before, and you're exactly right. He is basically telling you didn't miss it. You guys are good. How do you know you're good? Because these are the things that have to happen before and then. And he's saying it so plainly clear now. Gary, if I could just say, it just really speaks to how important it is to us, for us to approach this topic. And I say this for anyone out there who's still struggling with the question of pre-trib, post-trib, pre-wrath. It's difficult to approach the scriptures if you already have a preconceived notion of what you think the text is supposed to say.
Right.
And really try to come to the understanding of, when is the rapture going to actually happen? When is the return of Jesus actually going to happen? You really have to do what we just did. What does the text say? Set aside what you've been taught. Set aside what preconceived notions you have as you approach the text, and let it just speak to you what it's saying.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just heard it again, and I was like, I wish I would have done what we just did now back then, because I would have questioned a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Because this is indubitable. This is unquestionable. Paul gives clear markers, milestones for the return of Jesus. And for us to know, when it'll come, these things have to happen first and then.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even, like you said, he doesn't point to a secret rapture. He's talking about, he merges this idea of the return of Jesus. The protege is all one thing. So good. I'm just having a moment here.
It's good.
So if you're having a moment with me, go ahead and put it in the comment section. But this is really important, Gary, because I think that verses like this really unpack, I think, really just kind of dispel any other notion of when the return of Jesus is. I mean, it's so clear right here. And I've seen this before, obviously, but just re-experiencing how I experienced this once versus how I'm hearing it now so clearly is so important. And I think if you're wrestling with this, pay attention to this. Pay attention to what just happened right now.
Yeah, and we'll at the conference we'll be going over a lot of that, but we'll be talking about this for the next. Sure. How many weeks do we have till the conference?
4 more weeks.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, 4 or 5 more weeks. Yeah, we have Thanksgiving in 3 weeks, and then that's the fourth one is Christmas.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so we'll touch more on this, but you nailed it right. Do we have any comments or questions that we want to answer yet?
Guys, don't be shy. Go ahead and write in your comments or questions on the comment section.
So, approaching the scripture with preconceived ideas is so dangerous.
Yeah.
In that, especially when you're talking about the preconceived ideas, comes from thoughts like the way I would do it, or the way I would feel, or the way I think God feels and thinks. And we don't know, really. I mean, we know love. We know he loves us. We're his favorite creation on the earth. We know that he's for us and not against us. We know these truths, but we don't know the emotion or the depth of the truth until we see him. We're not going to know that. Wow. So our ideas of how God should express love is very limited. It's very small. So we get a preconceived idea that we would go like, well, I wouldn't do that to somebody. Why would God do that to somebody? And then we start to doubt God because we exalt ourselves above him. Instead of the only preconceived idea we should have is, I am man, he is God. I don't know. I can't think the way he thinks. I was reading Job the other day. Of course, you got to read Job every now and then. You just got to hit it right. Yeah. And I would even recommend, I never did this before till just recently, I read it in the New Living Translation. So instead of getting it real flowery, which I'm not saying there's a negative, I just like the rich words of the New King James, really. Right. But every now and then I like to get the Old Testament and go, give me some practical language in it. And boy, God was just like, Job, you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to me.
Yeah.
No idea. If anybody had preconceived ideas of God in relation to the suffering Job was taking, right?
Yeah.
What he was experiencing, it would be Job.
Right.
And God the whole book is about him correcting his preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
And his answer is, oh, come here, oh, shucks, I guess I'm being too hard on you. That's not his answer. His answer wasn't even, let me tell you what's going on. There's this great battle that's going on. I'm
Right.
making a point with Satan. Doesn't even tell him that.
Right.
He goes, Job, you have no idea. You weren't around when I did all of these things. You weren't around, for the oceans. You weren't around for the foundation of the mountains. And he's just kind of going in. And to me, God is brilliant, of course, in expressing that to us. He's lifting himself up, not because he's a narcissist. He's lifting himself up so that we can go, I'm going to trust you because 90% of the times I'm not going to understand.
Come on.
90% of the time of the things I go through, good or bad, I'm not going to understand them. So I got to trust you in them. So, we trust God when things are going good. And we go, because he really likes me, I could trust him. You have no idea why things went well for you.
Someone needs to hear that right now.
You don't know why.
That's so good.
We go, blessing. God likes you. He must be doing something right. He's really blessing you. All right, think about, I don't know, the richest people in the world. Right? They get all this money. Are you going, God's blessing them?
Come on. What a dangerous
Right? So that doesn't make,
Yeah.
it really doesn't make sense in overall economy. Right? And then the other side works. I'm really going through it. God's abandoned me because Satan is having a field day with me. Right? In both instances, it's all about trusting him to the level of good or bad. Yet will I, what did Job say? Though you slay me, still I will trust you.
Yes.
That's at the conclusion of God going, where were you when I did all of this? How can you counsel me on how I should act? And at the end of that, Job finally goes, which is something we need to wrestle with. And I can't say I've arrived at that. I want to. It's always in my head. I don't want to. I want to and I don't want to because the truth of it is painful that even if you were to slay me, you, God, you yourself slay me right now. And all the stuff that goes around that, he wasn't really a pastor. God really didn't like him. Look, even if you do that, I'm still going to trust you.
Come on.
Right? So that's where we're at when it comes to the rapture, the getting out of here, the pre-trib. No, I'm not going to say that, but I could almost say, pre-trib is a lack of trusting in God's goodness because he won't make me go through any of the great tribulation. I know that's really harsh. I'm sorry. But I'm saying that just as an example. I don't believe that any of my pre-trib friends would associate that way. But you have to wonder if it comes out, if its foundation is there. God wants me happy. So he's going to bless me, and I'll avoid all the problems. Try to preach that message in Haiti right now.
Come on.
Where there's 17 still, out of 22, 17 church members still under the captors.
Yeah.
And who knows what they're going through. Try to preach, God must abandon you because you're going through all that trouble. The Nigerian churches, the Ethiopian churches being slaughtered in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You're going to go in there and preach a message and go, God's not going to do that to you. You won't suffer anything. Don't worry. That's not going to happen to you.
And those are extreme examples and real examples, but very extreme. But even outside of the United States, I mean, just Latin America, where perhaps there isn't this level of persecution, Christians are struggling.
Yeah.
Struggling just to get by, struggling for that daily bread, struggling for just life in these third world countries is very, very difficult. And so there's a message of God doesn't want you to suffer that can't preach outside of America.
Right.
Can't be preached outside of this nation. And so it's not gospel because the gospel can be preached everywhere and still land.
Yeah.
And so this is a notion that I think is just, and to speak to the heart of pre-tribbers when it comes to the idea of suffering, speaking as one who taught pre-trib, I did believe that we had to be prepared for some level of struggle or challenge, if you will, or some level of tribulation,
Yeah.
if you will. But it was very light because there is an inevitable expectation that before it really gets serious, I'm out of here. I don't have to suffer too much. But we're not going to go through anything that bad. And that's what that does. It makes you want to put down your armor. It's never.
Wow.
I'm never going to need the sword. It's never going to be that bad, because before it really gets bad, before I actually need to be willing to stay, lay down my life for the sake of the gospel, we'll be out of here.
Yeah.
In the twinkling of an eye. So there's that kind of expectation naturally flows out of it. Even if it's not what brings you to the table of pre-trib, it certainly is what comes away from the table of pre-trib, because you don't have to worry about the real time of trying, the real time of testing, because you're expected to be out of here before it all hits. Before it all hits. And so that's a reality. That's an inevitable reality that comes from that sentiment.
Wow, you're sparking 100 thoughts in my head with all you just said. I'm trying to sort them out with what I want to respond to you with. It's so true that there is a degree of unpreparedness that comes with that. It's interesting that I was speaking to someone about this, and they said pre-tribulation rapture increases the motivation for evangelism. Post-tribulational view decreases motivation for evangelism, because you got plenty of time. You're not going to evangelize people. But because you're running out of time, you will evangelize. And I was just like, that is not the motivation for evangelism, is not you're running out of time.
Right?
I mean, wow. I was just blown away by that, because I'm going, the motivation to be a witness is devotion.
Yeah.
It's not because we're running out of time. It's because you have devotion for the Lord. You're moved by the motivation of a heart that's breaking forth about your salvation and deliverance. From a life of unknowing that you were in sin. You didn't even know you were in sin, right? And so anyway, just to kind of piggyback on some of the stuff you said, that this whole idea of what unpreparedness does, it keeps you unprepared, and then it keeps you in a place of making definitive statements around the idea of time pressure. Instead of developing devotion in the midst of your knowing that the Lord is coming, trouble's coming, you need to endure both. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's a greater motivation. I think so. I mean, as I sit here as a mortal, it seems to be a greater motivation to me. And of course, Jesus said it. Jesus said, a servant is not greater than his master. All right, where did he say that? I got to get somebody. Someone tell me. A servant is not greater than his master. Okay, so Jesus, the master, went through tribulation.
Come on.
Not just a little bit, right? It's not to take what you were saying before. We'll go through a degree of trouble, right? But not when the big stuff happens.
Right.
All right, so Jesus didn't say, I just went through a little trouble. Because he's going, you're not greater than me. I went through suffering. You're going to go through suffering. I have deliverance, resurrection. You will be delivered and have resurrection, right? So the whole idea of take up your cross.
Yeah.
Follow me. How? In what? In the trouble I had in my walk with the cross, right? So it all kind of fits there, that for us to go, you took on the trouble, so I don't have to. That's not Bible anywhere. He just did. Not only did he not say it, he said the opposite.
The exact opposite.
Right? The exact opposite.
Peter calls it our inheritance to suffer for Christ.
Yeah, right. It's part of what we absolutely are going to go through. So if that's going to happen, then how do we prepare for the trouble? So little puny minds, guns, food, caves, we're just going to survive physically. No. What does it say in Hebrews? What did Habakkuk say? Right? The just shall live by faith. By faith. And guess what that word is? It's not belief, because belief is arbitrary. It's steadfastness. It's faithfulness.
Yes.
It's being steady.
That's good.
That's how you live.
Wow.
That's how you go through trouble. I want to be able to say, I won't be moved in the day of trouble. And we get to rehearse that now.
You get to rehearse
We
that
rehearse it.
I
I know
love
I don't like trouble. I don't like trouble, but every time trouble comes to me, and it'll come to you too. It'll come to you. Whenever, JP, behind the scenes, it'll come to you. When trouble comes to us, it's an opportunity to rehearse our steadfastness. I won't be moved. The natural man is to be moved, is to go, God, what are you doing? And I gave you all my years, and this is how you treat me. Right? What is that? That's a shaking of our faith. The just will live in the day of trouble by steadfastness, steadiness in that day.
Oh, wow.
All right, so what Paul said, don't waste your times of trouble.
Yeah.
You know, they're momentary and they're light, all right, but they're building for you something. What? We're training.
Come on.
It's not that they're building for us in that day. God's going to measure all of our troubles and go, hey, I'm going to give you this because you had a lot of troubles. That's not what he's saying. They're actually building in you something. What? To stand steady in that day, the eternal weight of glory.
So good.
We stand steady. So every trial, every crisis is supposed to train us. Because just prior in that passage, Paul's going, I train like a runner. I train like a boxer. I'm not just beating in the air. This beating in the air that you see when you see me training, I'm not losing my mind. I'm building something in me so that when the boxer shows up, now I'm ready to fight the fight.
So good.
All right, so we have these little troubles now so that when the big trouble shows up, we're ready to fight the fight.
Wow.
And that's what it's all for.
You know, and I can't help but to think, you know, what we are doing when we are trying to avoid suffering. And when we preach a message of just, just assimilating to the world or just comfort or prosperity messages, I mean, what that's doing to the state of the church, making her anemic and weak.
Yeah.
You know, and we know the trouble's coming, ready or not, it's coming.
Right.
You know, it's not, I'm going to wait till you're ready. It's going to come when it's going to come. And if we haven't been training, I mean, it's like facing, to use your analogy of a boxer, it's like facing a heavy worldweight champion of the world, and you haven't been preparing and training up for this.
Right.
I mean,
But you knew it was
the trouble was coming, and you wasted your time. You had the opportunity to build that. That's amazing. We're going to be talking more about that in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
What specifically that time of trouble is going to look like. But Gary, I don't know if you're going to believe this, but we're running out of time.
Wow, that was quick.
We've been talking for almost an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And we only have about 10 more minutes. We got to get
Are
to the
there any
conference.
questions?
There are no questions.
Oh, we must be really good, Bernie.
Yeah, I like to think
We've
of
explained it so well.
Explained it so well that we left no questions unanswered. We're going to be covering different topics every week. We just want to remind you that, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to get some of those questions out there. Or maybe you want to hear some clarifications on certain things that are very helpful. I mean, every time I sit here with you, Gary, I get so much out of it. And I'm able to understand more fully and more thoroughly, what the end time drama looks like. And we're going to be talking about that at the end of this year with this week-long conference. You said 4 days. It's actually 5 days.
It's 5 days.
That we're going to have. We have four guests, including yourself. You're the fifth, but you're not a guest. But you are one of the speakers. Let's look at that really quickly before we close out. Let's talk about this conference. It's the Return Conference.
Yep.
It starts on the 27th. And actually,
It's our third year.
It's our third year. Yeah, we're pretty excited about this. And we actually have a pre-conference event. It's that Sunday before day one starts on Monday. But that Sunday before, we have a solemn assembly, which everyone's welcome to, of course. But it's going to be a gathering.
What is a solemn assembly? How can you explain that?
Yeah, so the solemn assembly at best is, what we were after was to really posture the heart of the regional community that participates, that engages here at the House of Prayer, to posture our hearts and say, Lord, speak to our lives and just engage us in this week. And so the solemn assembly is a time of prayer. It's a time of consecration of our lives and just kind of, preparing our hearts and saying, Lord, speak to us. It's a provocation for the Lord.
Yeah.
Lord, please, we're hungry, we're yearning to hear your voice, to speak to our lives.
And we get the phrase from Joel,
chapter
chapter 2 and 3, where he goes, all this trouble is coming. Call everyone together for a solemn assembly.
A time of prayer, fasting, crying out to the Lord.
Position yourself.
And it's such a powerful night. I mean, we let the Spirit, Holy Spirit lead us, but it's always such a powerful night of just proclamation and intercession and crying out to the Lord. And so you're invited to that as well. That's Sunday night. I want to say it's the 26th, actually, at 7 p.m. But on Monday, we actually start off the conference. And to kick off the conference, who do we have? We have Stuart Greaves.
Stuart Greaves, yes, from IUP-KC, yeah. And he's speaking on, I don't have my sheet
Let's
with
see if
me.
I think I have it on here. Yep, I have it on here. Is this topic on here?
Yeah, the topic.
No, I don't have the topics with me, unfortunately.
I do. I just got to call it up. Isn't this great?
Yeah, I'm so excited, though. I mean, Stuart Greaves is the director of IHOP-KC, the prayer room, right?
Yes, he is. That's correct. He spent 20 years in the night watch.
That's right.
Which is just amazing. And now he directs the day. And he's a great speaker. He's been here before in person. And he's really, I'm almost there. Okay. Stuart Greaves. So he's going to be speaking on magnifying Christ in crisis.
Oh, that's right. That's a great title. I like that. Christ in the crisis. I got to remember that.
Wow. How to magnify Jesus in the midst of crisis.
Seeing him bigger than that problem.
Oh, my gosh. So that's going to be awesome. And then the next day, and now we'll be interviewing him at 2 o'clock.
That's right. So let's go over that format. So every day, Monday through Friday, we will have a 2 o'clock show just like this one,
right,
where we'll get to interview live our speaker for the night. And so every day at 2 o'clock, we'll go live on Facebook and YouTube and on our social media platforms as well as the app. And we'll get to have the opportunity to interview, get to know the speaker, and hear a little bit about what's on their heart with regards to the topic that they'll be addressing each night.
Right.
But then at night, at 7 p.m., we will go live again. And we'll have a time of worship. And every night, there's a different worship team from the region that will be joining us and leading us in worship for that week.
Right.
And so we have, I don't remember all the names of the different worship teams.
We have Christ Fellowship from Elizabeth.
Fellowship, yes. We have another church confirmed.
The Abundant Life in Whippany.
Abundant Life in Whippany.
Will be
and
with
a few
us.
others. Our Eastern Gate, our own worship team will be there as well. And a couple of others that we're confirming in the process. But we're really excited about that. And then following worship, we'll have the speaker. And that first day will be Stuart Greaves. The second day, though, we have at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for an interview. And then later on in the evening at 7 p.m., we have Mr. Joel Richardson.
Joel Richardson, New York Times bestselling author.
Yeah.
Written many, many books. He's a great speaker on the end times. And he is going to be speaking on the end time persecution of Jews and Christians.
Ooh, that's going to be so good.
I'm so looking forward to hearing that. So Wednesday, same format. I'm really excited. It's the first time he's been with us. I've seen him in person a couple times, met him a couple times, brief conversations. Dr. Michael Brown.
Dr. Michael Brown.
Some of you may know him from the Brownsville revival originally, but he is a Messianic Jewish man who's been part of the Tikkun International with Dan Juster for many, many years in the beginning. He is part of the Fire School Ministry. He launched 20 years ago, and he has his own show. He's a great speaker on Messianic. Ask Dr. Brown. Yep. Great speaker on Messianic issues and all issues. And so he's going to be speaking on Jewish evangelism in the end times.
That's so good.
Right?
I'm really excited about
the gospel's for the Jew first and to the Gentile. And how do we evangelize our Jewish brethren? Not to convert to Christianity, but to receive Messiah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's going to be a great subject.
Gonna be really great.
Thursday,
we have Mike Bickle of International House of Prayer, Kansas City.
Yeah, you all know him.
Doesn't need so much introduction.
Yeah, he'll be with us.
What's his topic?
So I asked him, I said, Mike, can you tell us, how do we build prayer rooms in the midst of the Great Tribulation?
That's it.
If all the crisis is growing, look what COVID did. It wiped out so many things, so many operations of the church. All right, increase that by 10. How do we build, not just perform, but build a prayer room? How do you thrive?
Yeah.
So I'm looking to hear his answer on that, what he comes up with.
That should be awesome. I look forward to that as well. And then day 5, we have Mr. D. Pasquale himself.
Right. Well, now day 5, something special is going on. So that's New Year's Eve day. Right. And we're part of the global upper room prayer meeting that's going to be going on around the world.
That's going to be awesome.
So we're actually going to be showing that on the webcast live in the prayer room all day. And then at night, we're going to come together in person in the prayer room. Everyone's invited. 7 to 8 is worship. And then we're going to go 8 to 9 the entire world is going to click over to us. And we'll be leading the globe in prayer from 8 to 9 p.m. Wow. I mean, that's just fantastic. It's going to come to the East Coast after it's been in the East. It's going to come over, land on the East Coast, the West for them, and we kick it off for an hour, 8 to 9, live, million or so people joining us in prayer. That's just fantastic.
Amazing.
So that'll be 8 to 9, Global Upper Room, live in our prayer room. And then I'll be sharing after that, briefly, taking all of the information that we received and summing it up into how then shall we live? What do we do with all of this information? How should we reposition ourselves? And I'm not going to just take out I don't have like one from the files.
From the archives.
Yeah, I'm going to really be listening because I'm really curious about all these subjects. Yeah. And I'll be putting together a message based on all of that. And then what happens after that?
I look forward to hearing that, and that's going to be a great way of just kind of culminating and posturing our hearts to do something with it. I think that's such a great question to ask. But then after that, we are going to, after we receive that word, we're going to go outside and have a time of fellowship. And
outside? Yeah. Is it going to be cold?
It's going to be cold, but we have heated tents.
Yes.
We're going to have big, like circus-like tents. So they're huge. We're going to have some food and refreshments there for everyone to enjoy each other's company. We're going to do that for about
an hour. And we want to do that so there's enough room to social distance,
exactly.
If you want to wear masks and do all of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's nice and warm, and it's nicely canopy.
And you get bundled up. It's kind of seasonal.
Yeah, it was nice.
You get the scarf.
It wasn't bad at all last year. We had a great time.
And then what happens?
And then after we had some refreshments, and as we approach the midnight hour, we all go outside. We have about 45 minutes to an hour before we'll be worshiping the Lord under the stars.
Yeah, worship team outside.
The worship team will be live outside.
Come on.
Live worship, live praise, and celebration. And then at the midnight hour, we do a countdown.
Yeah.
And at that last second, we'll have an explosive fireworks presentation for everyone to enjoy. Bring your children. It's going to be a great time.
And they're done safely by firemen.
We have a professional fireman who'll be here, and he'll oversee the entire process. But we had a really great presentation last year. We're going to do it bigger and better this year.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun last year. We're really excited about that. But it's going to be literally a bang.
Yeah.
It's going to be a blast.
That's good.
And we're going to have a great time and just reign in the new year in praise and celebration, just enjoying each other's company, enjoying the presence of the Lord, and great teachings from an entire week.
Amen.
I mean, there isn't a better way that I can think of to enjoy New Year's Eve going into the new year with the praise on our lips. And we're really excited. We're really excited about that.
So what could they do? Can they share what should they do? Let people know we're meeting on Fridays.
We have social media social media announcements for all the conversations that we're going to have every Friday. So help us out and just kind of forward or share on your own pages these weekly talks. We're calling them end time talks. And leading up to the conference, there's also going to be a lot of social media, especially as we get into the month of December, counting down the number of days. So go ahead and forward all of that in your social media platforms, make it part of your posts, part of your stories, and get the word out. Now, if you would like to join us on that last day of the celebration, day number 5, there is a registration that's required because we're trying to get a head count. Remember, the entire conference is totally free, including the last day. Yeah. But we just want to get a head count so we know how much to prepare for. So there is a registration that will be available as of this Sunday. You'll be able either to go on our social media platforms or the app, especially the app. And once you download the app, IHOP EG app, you're able to there register for the conference, and you and your family will be counted as one among the many who will be gathering during that time. So there's the information for the app. So it's both on Google Play as well as on the App Store for Apple. Yep. So it's available for everyone. It's a free download.
Okay, well, here we go.
That's it.
All right, we got a meeting we're running to.
Yes, we got to run now.
We got our own staff meeting at the prayer room. Thank you. And we'll see you next week, next Friday, same time. God bless you.
That was fun.